Hello and welcome to Festive Tech Calendar 2023 by the communities for the communities. As you all have been following, it started from 1st of December and it will go on till 31st, and you'll see a variety of sessions going on and a different blog posts and everything within festive tech calendar. And this is going to be my session where we are going to talk about a little bit of or more of Azure awesomeness. So without further delay, let's get started for today's session. And in today's session, what we are going to talk about is Azure Lockdown, which is defending your cloud kingdom. The name sounds a bit dramatic, but it's not, I'll say. Your cloud kingdom and your Azure Fortis that you are going to create, it basically, whenever you are building any even a house, whenever you are building any property of yours, first thing that you make sure that it should be secured. You make sure that you have a security alarm within your house. You make sure that you have the walls built properly, just and you make sure that you have, or in the worst case as well, you have the insurances for the house. uh, you can definitely get your cyber insurance, making sure if there is anything happens, you will be like protected from it. But that's not going to protect you from any worst thing that can happen to your environment, that can cause your reputational damage, that can cause your environment, Azure environment damage, or a cloud environment. I'm not saying it is just applicable for Azure, but you will have, it can depend on whatever cloud platform that you're using. So, and that comes out with and if you see the regulations as well, there is a hefty fine, and as well as it will be a loss to your business as well as your users. So, defending your kingdom is very much, I'll say, mandatory, just to make sure that whatever things that you are deploying in on your environment, whatever things that you have deployed is secured, it is governed properly, and you have a proper environment that can sustain in this world where we have every day thousands of vulnerabilities and thousands of attacks coming in. Moving along, what do we expect in next 45 minutes? So, in next 45 minutes, what we are going to talk about is a quick overview, which will be like what all we have within the Microsoft space for security, and how the attacks are looking at this point of time. We are going to look at the zero trust implementation, which will be like how you can implement zero trust with Microsoft tools and services. We are going to look at MCRA, which is Microsoft Cybersecurity Reference Architecture, which will give you a view of what all we have. And I'll also let you know how you can find the MCRA, which is a Microsoft published a full set of uh, architectures as well as the attack paths as well they have given. The next one is going to be Azure Landing Zone. And the reason why I'm talking Azure Landing Zone in this is basically any environment that you are creating, you need to have a proper foundation laid out for that. And when I say proper foundation, that includes security as well. So within the Azure well architected framework, as well as Azure Cloud Adoption Framework, you will find one common thing, one common pillar, which is going to be security. And that is basically common across all the cloud providers. So even though if you see the AWS CAF, if you see any other GCP's well-architected framework, you will find the security within that as well. So security is not basically, it's not a luxury to have, I'll say it is a must need thing. Okay. And the last but not the least, what we are going to look at is what is going to be the security review. So basically, you have deployed things, you have things within your environment, how you're going to make sure that it is there, and how you're going to make sure that you're following the best practices within your environment. Before we start, a little bit about myself. My name is Tushar Kumar. I'm a cloud security lead at Kodak Ireland. I work day in, day out with security solutions, working with various organizations in designing their infrastructure, designing their application, making sure that whatever they are deploying, it is secure enough, and as well as they are protected from any sort of vulnerabilities that is coming in. So, moving along, just a small number over here which says 95% of all breaches happens because of poor hygiene. Okay. So if you have a proper cybersecurity hygiene, you will be able to stop 95% of the attacks. Okay. When I say that, what is proper hygiene in cybersecurity space is going to be you should not be having excess access. People should be having, you should be following the least privileges mechanism. So you should not be giving people access likes of global admin, and you have like hundreds of global admin within your organization with, and you don't have a track of it, or maybe you don't have a proper governance on top of that. You don't have a second factor authentication within your active directory, within your authentication mechanism in your applications. So that makes another a very big loophole which can be easily exploited. Your data is sitting within your environment, and you don't have a proper mechanism in place which you can use to track where your confidential data is going. Or maybe if someone starts, so let's say if I am leaving my organization and I start taking all the data dump in my laptop, and or maybe put it in a pen drive, or maybe send it off to someone, or log into someone else's SharePoint and upload everything there, that's not there. You are one prone to have a data breach as well. If you're having a deprecated protocol, so likes of TLS 1.0, if you are still using those, if you're still using like old mechanisms, old deprecated platforms, which is long, I think, which is long back deprecated, you are very much prone to have be exploited because of that. And your overall environment can be at risk. So you might think there is only one server I have within my environment which has some sort of vulnerability. So I'll just ignore that. That can be a bigger part of a bigger problem, because once someone walks into the door, right, they can walk into your house anywhere, and it will be just part of a little bit of resistance, or maybe no resistance while going from one place to other, but you will not be able to control that once someone is in the door. So basically, in order to protect the lateral movement, you need to make sure so your even your legacy devices, yeah, are either out of your network, or maybe it's like anything that is using a deprecated protocols is properly secured, and as well as they have a proper, I'll say, guardrails put on that, just to make sure in that lateral movement from those machines should not happen to anywhere to your production data, or maybe your sensitive data. So that's more of looking at what all we have. So just looking at a quick view of Microsoft's capability mapping at this point of time, right? So we are not going to go like each and every block of it. So what we have here is we have 5 blocks, which is basically defining every area where that we should be looking into. And every area has some sort of Microsoft product that you can utilize to make sure that you are protected from that piece. So if I talk about access control, like the overall Entra ID can give you a full suite of identity protection. You have Lighthouse, which is basically helping you out in terms of multi-tenant access. You have Bastion, which is going to give you like RDP access. You have Intra SSE, which is a secured service edge. You have endpoint administrations as well, which is going to help you with managing your mobile devices and everything. Same goes for your security operations. You have a full suite of Defender products, which is basically giving you the XDR capability, having starting from endpoint, going until your cloud apps and anything and everything that you deploy within your Azure environment. And the best thing is, it is not only limited to your Azure environment. So the Defender capabilities extend to your on-premises as well, to your hybrid cloud workloads, and as well as multi-cloud. So even if you're running multi-cloud services, you have a couple of servers lying in AWS, you can still onboard them to Defender, and all of that gets onboarded. All of those gets fed into Microsoft Sentinel, which is an cloud-based SIM solution, which gives you a proper tracking and as well as proper making incident investigation mechanism, which you can utilize, which you can use and run your own KQL queries to find out if there is any sort of issues that you are seeing. A very good thing that is coming in, and a lot of you have already seen a lot of presentations and videos coming in, and whoever has got their hands on security copilot, which is again going to be another game changer, which is going to help you out in a lot of forensics and giving you a lot of details around any incidents. Again, security governance is going to be one piece which is a must have for all the organization, which is going to give you a full view of how your security is. You should be having a security dashboard, which is going to help you out with all the sub services, which you get it as part of Microsoft Defender for Cloud. On the data security point of view, you should be having data loss protection and as well as information protection. From asset protection perspective as well, right? Anything that is getting in and out of your environment, any traffic or any deployments that is happening, it should be protected with firewalls. Any web application should be with DDoS, and all of those assets goes, and we have multiple products here which can help you out with that. And at the end of it, here on the very corner, you'll see the innovation security, which is more of a going into DevSecOps approach of making sure your overall environment is secure. So DevSecOps is basically making sure you have the deployments, uh, and you have the deployments controlled, you have the security embedded in your application lifecycle as well, just to make sure anything that is getting deployed have a security layer and it is going through a proper checks and getting scanned as well. So you have Azure DevOps security, you have GitHub Advanced Security, and as well as you have Defender for DevOps as well, which will help you out in code analysis as well. Okay, so let's let's quickly see about MCRA, which is, and here is the link that you can follow to find this particular presentation, which has not this particular presentation, but a couple of slides of this presentation, which basically talks about the MCRA. So this presentation, basically what we are looking at on the screen at this point of time is on-premises and cloud data center. What we are saying, you should be having all the areas likes of Edge DLP, you should be having VPN and proxy on top of this, and all of that should be governed. Okay, so how this all brings down within and falls under the Microsoft security umbrella is basically going to be like, I'll just go through all of them. Okay, so I think, so if you look at in the middle of this is basically what lies is your cloud and your hybrid cloud workloads. Okay, so you have multiple options to go with. Either you go with the Pro Microsoft, all tools with Microsoft, and you have an option to Azure Marketplace as well, which gives you the third-party tools likes of Palo Alto, you with likes of Cisco and all. So what we are looking at here is we have our servers to be deployed, servers and our applications deployed on Azure, at AWS, or any third party to or any other cloud as well, and all of that is basically getting governed by our uh, services that we have deployed here on Azure. So now Azure Bastion can be extended to your on-premises as well. You give access to people who want from a different tenant, likes of your managed services provider through Azure Lighthouse. Azure Backup is going to help you out with the backup of your on-premises as well as your cloud workloads. Same goes for Azure Firewall, which is going to give you a full firewall control on your cloud. And as well as you can, if you are using like, let's say, Palo Altos or Cisco or Checkpoint firewall, you can get that third party firewall within your Azure as infrastructure as well. So the hybrid infrastructure, the first piece that we are looking at here, I'll just try to get my pen up. So this piece is basically going to make sure that we have everything, including our third-party cloud as well as our on-premises, everything being secure. Okay. The new thing that is coming in, and it is already in preview. If you haven't heard about this piece, I'll suggest you can visit my website and you can see I just recently did a talk on intra-private access, which is a secured service edge that you are going to get. So which is going to be like a beyond VPN technology. It is like a secured service edge. Everything is going through the edge network of Microsoft and you're connecting. You don't need a VPN anymore. What you will be doing is you'll be deploying the Defender as a Defender agent on your work on your different endpoints here. So basically, your endpoint being Android device, Apple device. This service is still in preview, but there is couple of agents are already available, likes of Windows, and the Android one is getting. I think it is getting launched in next couple of days. So you can access the services through the Microsoft Secured Service Edge. What will happen is if you have earlier on used uh, Azure Active Directory app proxy, which is like Entra ID app proxy now. So it uses the same technology to give people access to your private workloads, like of your servers, your file servers, and other stuff. Get connecting it to your local environment. You can publish all the applications through this, and basically what it is going to give you is it is going to give you all the going to give you an additional layer of it is basically I'll say identity centric more. So let's say if someone here is sitting in a cafe with not secured Wi-Fi and trying to access your workload, what will happen is they will be prompted with let's say additional multi-factor authentication or more secured authentication mechanism, likes of they'll be asked for a hardware token or something. And because all of these enter a private access and app is basically governed by conditional access, so you can make sure that whoever is accessing the file share, it's not like the VPN itself that let's say if I download the VPN, your organization's VPN on my laptop, and I try to access your file share within your environment. Once I'm connected to your organization, I can access anything which is under the same network area. But what will happen here is if you do it with intra-private access way, what will happen is you will not have any sort of you'll not have any sort of like an open behavior here. What will happen is anything likes of your file server which is exposed, you will have access to that only. For your on-premises workloads, you have Azure Stack, you have Azure Arc. So once you have onboarded your servers to Azure Arc, you actually open up the possibilities of going into more and more of the Defender stuff that we talked about. It comes under the Defender for Cloud umbrella, which is basically a cross platform. So anything that is getting onboarded, being it AWS server, GCP server, or being it an on-premises server, it will get onboarded to the Defender for Cloud umbrella. And all of that basically works. All of that works with Azure native technologies. Okay, let's just remove all this. Okay, so on the left hand side, what we have here is it's basically going to be your endpoints. So, and I feel this is the most important piece of your overall environment. Okay, because if your endpoints are secured, if your users are secure, they don't have much of a, like I'll say, excess access, or maybe they are not prone to be exploited. In that case, you are removing half of your headache from the cybersecurity standpoint. So making sure that all the user devices are properly configured, you go with the Intune or configuration manager, making sure you're pushing the right policies, you're making sure that the users that are there in the environment, they are not able to, let's say, plug in a device which might have a malware, or they are not able to plug in an external storage devices and copy all the data over. You're having a defender for endpoint along with the DLP compatible DLP enabled, which will help you out, making sure that the none of the end user devices are getting involved into any of the data compromise, and no data is getting moved, or maybe someone is trying to copy paste the data from somewhere to for some let's say for any confidential information to anywhere which is not permitted, or not getting upload files are not getting uploaded anywhere which they are not supposed to. Okay, so that's basically going to give you more of the endpoints side of it, and endpoint DLP is just a part of it, but your data can be sitting on the multiple locations. So that brings us down to the information protection pieces of it. Okay. And I know we are just supposed to talk about Azure side of it, but the overall environment security will be making sure that your environment is secure enough. Just making sure that Azure environment have the private links enabled, or making sure that the devices have Defender enabled. That will not make sure that you have 100% alignment, 100% security alignment. You need to make sure that your devices are secure. You need to make sure your information protection is enabled, which is making sure anything that is lying on your Teams, is anything that is sitting on your Outlook, any Word documents, or maybe anything that is sitting on SQL, or your S3 or a file storage basically is not basically out wide and open, and anyone can copy and paste it anywhere. That will basically break the purpose, and you will end up getting into a situation where you have a data breach even after having all the controls from this side of the house. Okay. As part of the overall identity security is another going to be important piece which is going to be covered, and we have already talked about Entra a lot. So making sure you have passwordless, you have any MFA or passwordless approach. Microsoft recommended way is these days is going to be the passwordless approach, making sure that you're using authentication tokens, or using authenticator app for logins, just to make sure that you are having a proper protection on top of it. Okay. And all of that, as I said in the previous slide as well, all of that is getting governed by the conditional accesses, and pushing everything going back to our Microsoft Sentinel, which is basically going to give us a view under a single umbrella, which will help you out doing a proper threat hunting, incident response, putting automation in place, which will be basically likes of, let's say, if some server is getting like malicious traffic, or some detect something is detected, let's say a very simple example, then just isolate that server from the network, just so if someone has got into that net server, they will not be able to get from this server to any of these servers. So that's going to be another piece. So the on top of this is basically what we have is Sentinel umbrella, which is either you can get in touch with Microsoft security expert with after that as well, or you can have your own managed security operations. uh, that's basically a call from the organizational side of it. Okay, we have already talked about the IoT and operational technologies. So basically, we have Defender for IoT, we have Azure Sphere, which is basically going to give you all the functionalities, all the Defender goodness on your IoT devices as well. And the last piece here, which is almost hidden by my face, uh, it's basically here, is going to be around the people security. So when we say people security, what we mean is making sure, because you can have all the controls, but if your users are not educated on the technologies, or if they don't have a proper uh, procedures to follow on the systems, like likes of you deploy information protection, you have auto labeling on, you have and it is doing tremendous job, but still someone is typing in something which is, and they are not labeling it wherever manual labeling is required, then you are prone to lose those data. So just because of this, what all you need is, you need to make sure that the users are totally trained on different technologies. You need to make sure you have an attack simulator. So this basically comes as O365 at this point of time with Defender, where you have attack simulator capabilities. What you can do is you can run a simulated attacks, the likes of sending very simple example will be sending a phishing email to all your employees, or maybe a set of employees, saying that something is wrong with something and you need to click this link. Or maybe you have been gifted a pass or something like that, and then you get a response from that piece, that how many of the employees have reported that this campaign is going on, how many employees have clicked on the link, how many employees have clicked on the link and given their credentials as well. So it's basically going to give you a full view of what is the level of what is the level of people in the organization in terms of the training of for those all those technologies. And that basically makes sure that you can run campaigns, you can run different user clinics, just to make sure that the users are trained properly on the various scenarios, likes of phishing, which is like sending users a very like a cheesy email, or maybe having them clicking on that and getting their password stolen, or their credentials stolen over there. Okay, so all of that, you can find it on aka.ms/mcra, which is going to give you a full view of this. And it is a very big slide deck that you can follow, and you'll find a lot of information within that. So we are going to look at getting it all together and looking at zero trust framework. Okay, so what is zero trust framework? And the three building blocks of the zero trust framework is verify explicitly, like making sure you are verifying everything. That means zero trust is, I feel like, the first pillar itself. It says zero trust. Don't trust anyone, anything getting into your environment. You have to make sure that you do your checks before the someone gets in. And I was talking about the intra SSE, that makes sure every time you get in your environment, you are verified. Every time you access something, you are verified. If there is anything changed after that, you verify again. Impose the least privilege access, which is basically make sure if you need a global admin access, you have to make sure it is for a limited period. You have to make sure it is not always active on your environment, and you have to make sure you have a limited people having that access as well. Okay. Assume breach is the last pillar of this, which is basically says every time just consider that there is a breach. Okay. And make sure that feeds it back to the first one, that make sure it is breach and verify. That's why you have to verify everything that is coming in. Okay. So how all the services that we talked about in the previous slide marries up with our zero trust capability here. So looking at from endpoint security to your data security, your credentials management, your workstations, your virtual desktops, making sure how you are going to do that with Microsoft services. So Microsoft, as part of the MCRA, has published a zero trust capability mapping, which is implemented at NCSUOE lab. And if we see this capability over here, it will be like totally feeding into everything. Okay, so let's just consider the scenario where we have our endpoint security pieces. So we will be having our users, which will be using the devices like of mobile devices, various SDPs, and all of those devices will be governed by our Intune and Defender for Endpoint, which is basically now having most of even your intra global secure access is also embedded into Defender for Endpoint as well. So all of that goes in here. Based on that, you access anything which goes to, let's say, basically you get into your identity credentials access management. You do, based on your identity, your user profile, your device, you go into the Defender. You go into the identity and credential management, which is basically from Entra ID. And Entra ID will provide you all the functionality of your IAM basically, and it is going to put an identity governance on top of this, which is basically help you out with all the federation and all this stuff. Once you are out of that, what you are getting into is conditional access, that is making sure you have a proper policies enabled and you are following all the policies where it is defining for where you are going to be granted and what all access you have. That's basically going to help you out, making sure that you have a zero trust boundary there. Okay, so just because you have got in, that doesn't mean that you have access to something that is following the least privileged scenario. And based on that, the access goes to specifics of your services, likes of your third-party services, your uh, applications, and everything. Okay, what we do here is you are going to have your on-premises apps and workloads as well. So you are going to do the Azure Archway, what we discussed on the last one. You're going to have information protection scanner, which is going to help you out in labeling, which is going to help you out in classifying the data. And on top of that, you are going to have a connector deployed for intra-private access as well, which is again going to feed back to this here, which is again going to feed back to your global secure access as well. So your global secure access goes back from here. It goes to a conditional access, it evaluates, it goes back to your connector, and based on the connector, it goes back to your application, your database, maybe file share, your storage. So it goes all the way like this. Okay. Any of your service admins with basically any of your workstation or admin workstations is basically again getting this two things. You are evaluated by Entra, making sure the conditional access is fulfilled. You are making sure that the user is not sitting in somewhere in a different part of the world. You are making sure that the user is compliant, the device that they are using is compliant. You are making sure that the Wi-Fi they are connected to is a compliant Wi-Fi, or if they are compliant connected to a non-compliant Wi-Fi, they'll not be able to access the secure workstations. Okay. Same for your virtual desktops, because you now these days we have a lot of our workforce working from remotely, and we need Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 for that. All of that is getting again fed into the Intune, and then again it is being governed by our identity. So you are verifying explicitly for everything. You have all the stuff over here. Okay. Now, now looking at your data security perspective, what we have here is, again, the data loss protection is in there. You are putting DLP controls, making sure that you have all the data which is confidential or marked as confidential should not be shared outside your organization. You have proper controls around that, just to make sure if someone is sharing, you are getting the notification out of it. You are doing a proper labeling of the data as well, to basically make sure you're scanning the date files. So let's say if there is a Word file which says, okay, some confidential data that is being monitored and that is being captured as well. All of that, again, getting fed to your Office 365, and you have Defender for cloud apps, and you have Defender for Office 365 in there, which is basically making sure that your M365 environment is protected, and you have again the Defender for all enabled. So which is basically making sure any kind of threat which is sitting in your file server, which is getting in your file server, getting uploaded in your file server, your SQL DB, is basically contained. Okay, all that getting fed into Microsoft Sentinel, which is again going to give you all the automation capabilities and giving you a full event management around security. Okay, so that's more of a services getting married with zero trust, how you're going to define everything within your organization for zero trust. Now, the last thing that we are going to talk about in this one is going to be the enterprise scale landing zone. And I promised in the very beginning we are going to talk about the landing zone. Okay, you might ask, okay, there is no security subscription over here. You can see the landing zone subscription, you can see the sandbox subscription, you can see management, you can see identity. The reason being, security is should be built by design. Okay, and we are not dedicating a specific subscription, because all of the areas that we are looking at here needs to have a security component in place. Okay, so within this, what we are looking at is going to be more of starting with identity protection, which is identity subscription, which where we are going to make sure that we have our identity extended, we have our identity managed with Azure Active Directory over here, we have we have our connectivity defined properly, making sure that we have DDoS protection, we have DNS protection, we have our services connecting to it on a proper channel, like likes of this landing zone is not going direct straight to your identity, it is going through this, just to make sure the traffic is getting filtered and everything. Okay, on the identity side of it, you have to make sure that all of the identity components that we talked about on the last side, on the Azure side of it, is getting there. You have a PIM defined, and you have a proper approval workflow within the PIM. You have notifications set up for any sort of access, and you have MFA, you have access reviews enabled, making sure you have a proper way of making sure you're least privilege, and you have auditings on as well, just to make sure you can follow the trails as well. All of that goes into specific roles and the custom roles as well, and you need to make sure that all the identity security functionalities are enabled for that. Okay, that not just applies for the enter ID and the users only, it applies for the managed identities as well as your service principals and or your enterprise applications as well, and that gets extended to your as Azure Active Directory as well as your on-premises Active Directory. Okay, so that's more of an identity and access. This is more of a, I'll say this is most of the time neglected from the security standpoint, but I prefer this to be a top one of the top priorities around the BCDR pieces. So backups as well as your DR is must have, and you have to plan for the landing zone subscription that you are going to create, where you are going to deploy your application components. You should be having another pair of it in a different region with your data there, data encrypted. Your backups should be enabled with multi or user authorization on your Azure, just to make sure that the no one user can do that. You should be having the soft delete features enabled just to make sure that no one can delete anything from your storage accounts that goes in straight to the bin directly. It stays in for a specific period just to make sure you can just go back and retrieve that. Uh, Security governance and compliance, which basically the full umbrella of putting all the policies, the role definitions, making sure you have proper resource templates and everything, making sure anything that is getting deployed is deployed with the resource templates, and you have policies to govern on that. Okay, you have specific organization level compliance setup, which is making sure that you are applying, like, let's say, limits to your keywords, making sure there is always key rotation. You have your workstation, your applications, or whatever it is, whatever you are doing on cloud at this point of time is not using like a likes of any weak links or any weak keys or something like that. So you should be having a full control through policies on your overall security posture. So we are almost there. What we are going to take a look at, I'll just quickly zoom into this piece, which is looking at how we are going to maintain. So keeping it all together basically will require a lot of effort. That's that's going to be your first view of this. So anything that is happening on cloud, Defender for Cloud is going to give you a full dashboard of it. And if you see on the left hand side of it, you will find a secure score option as well. So you can go through this, you can look at the Defender for Cloud dashboard and see how you are doing security wise within your cloud environment. This is basically going to give you a full view of any misconfiguration that you have, any deviation from the best practices, or if there is any vulnerabilities that Microsoft sees within your environment that should be flagged. So all of that, you will find it on the Secure Score dashboard for Azure. There is another dashboard over here, which is basically called Microsoft Secure Score again, but this is for M365 Defender. So when you look at this is more from the M365 side of the house, but you get the recommendation for the devices as well as the virtual machines that you're going to deploy on the other side. So you get all the identity weak links, you get all the device weak links, you get all the application weak links based on the best practices as well as the vulnerabilities that are coming in. And what will happen here is you can even track the secure score, you can track the improvement of it over time, just so you can show it to the C level, making sure that okay, we were at 53%, now we have reached to 55%, we have made improvement to our security. And that score applies for this. As you can see over here, it's 59%, and over here you can see it's 53%. Okay, there is a lot of recommendation, and I'll say it is not all the time. It is not all the time 100%. There is a lot of recommendation going to be redundant for your implementation. You might have a different sort of security mechanism, so you can always suppress those, and you can make sure that those gets excluded from the environment and from the scoring here. Okay, so the last one over here is what we are going to talk about is once we have done this, we have our secure score to track it. But while we are doing this, how should we track all these? Okay, and how should we look at what all we have? So there is a really nice repository from Microsoft side, and it's from, and very big kudos to the fast track team who has done this checklist. If you have seen a checklist for Azure Landing Zone reviews, you might have visited this link already. There are multiple checklists within that, and one of that is security review as well. You can also see an assessment published by Microsoft, which is called Microsoft Security Assessment. I'll go back, not quite quickly. Okay, so I'll go back in here. I'll just bring that one up. So it looks something like this. This is the GitHub repository that we are talking about, is called review checklist. And within this, you have multiple options. You can go in within the spreadsheet options, and there is what I like is the macro free one. And you can find a security checklist over here. So you can find a security checklist which is with multiple languages as well. And if you don't find your language, you can just go in and download the master sheet, and it is enabled with my Azure language. So it will give you in your language as well. So if you get the English one, what you will find is something like this, which is basically going to give you around everything. So every area likes of being your access control, your Active Directory, threat protection, architecture, and tons of it. So it's like a huge list that you can follow. Whatever applies, there is 610 items in this. Okay, don't get scared with this just because you have here tons and tons of services. So likes of, let's say, VNet, private link, event hubs. So let's say if you're not using any of these services, you can just, like, let's say, ExpressRoute. So I'll just take out, if you're not using ExpressRoute, just take out ExpressRoute and you'll have less. Same thing, I have a filter on here. This is because this is the master list of that, and you have everything like of the business continuity performance, and it is really nice to go through this when you are doing an implementation, or maybe when you are reviewing your existing implementation, to make sure that your environment is up to the mark and following the best practices. Okay, the second one over here, as we talked about, is going to be this. So if you go on Microsoft Assessments, you will find this Cloud Adoption Security Review, which is basically, we can see this is a result example. So basically what it is going to give you is how you're doing it overall in every or side of it, while you're doing the security planning, what all you're doing, strategy, your governance, how it is at this point of time, and based on that, it will give you a recommendation that you should be doing these 10 things, or you should be doing these 15 things on your environment. Okay, so that's another good resource to go through. Yeah, with this, basically, I will conclude my session, and hopefully you enjoyed the session. We have a lot of other sessions as well planned for this festival tech calendar. If if you're looking for more of my sessions, you can find it on https theazway.com, and there you will find all of my sessions and my profile as well to connect with me. Thank you so much for watching this, and I wish you a very happy Christmas and a very happy New Year. Thank you.